with that, let's head on over to Norman, Oklahoma. Let's talk about them. They lose Jeff Lebby at that offensive coordinator spot. I don't think they're really missing out on that. Like that offense, I think is still talented, but the offensive line, and we'll get to it, could be a little sketchy. Could be a little sketchy. But I guess
Let's not. Yeah,
we'll start in
I'm
the
with you.
quarterback room. We'll start in the quarterback room. Okay. I mean, I love Jackson Arnold. And I've heard it go both ways. I've heard people like that are Jackson Arnold stands and like, yeah, like Jackson Arnold is so talented. And I've also heard on the other side, like, whoa, 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 whoa. He wasn't even that good in the bowl game, guys, which by the way is false.
You
Like,
watch that game. Did you watch that game?
what? Like, yeah, he made a couple mistakes in that game, but holy cow, was he effective in that game against, by the way, a very good Johnny Manson coach defense that had a lot of talent. So I was blown away watching him. I was blown away watching him in high school and whatever. You bring back Casey Thompson. Well, you don't bring back Casey Thompson. He's from Oklahoma, so that's what I mean by you bring back Casey Thompson. I guess you bring him back to the same conference as Texas because he was at Texas, Nebraska, FAU. Now he's landed back in Norman, Oklahoma. What a whirlwind! I think he's a solid backup. I really do. I think he's a solid backup.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time since he threw for what, like 2,000 yards back in 2021. But yeah, I think you could do a lot worse in a day and age where backup quarterback's not easy to come by. It's not with so many options, it's hard to convince viable power four starters if you need, right, to come in and be your backup, especially for a guy like Arnold who's going to be there for multiple years and is obviously you're very committed to. But yeah, Thompson, good job with his staff by bringing him back, like you said, to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean the question is though, like behind there, right? Like if shit hits the fan, and I don't think a lot of college football teams can say that they really feel comfortable with their third and fourth string guys. But would you be throwing out true freshmen there, or would it be the transfer from Akron? I don't know. I don't know who you're throwing out there as your third string.
Listen, I don't I think Oklahomans do not want to worry about that. Or I hope
But
not.
but when you have
They
offensive line concerns, I
yeah.
like
Arnold's a big dude though. He can take it.
Connor Wigman's a big dude. Jalen Henderson is a big dude.
With those broken arms, like those are fluke
Max
plays.
Johnson is a big dude.
Max Johnson has zero awareness in the pocket. Okay, I trust Jackson Arnold. I trust Seth Littrell to get the ball out. I trust them to lean on a guy like Gavin Sawchuk. You've got Javante Barnes, and then I guess we'll talk about that running back room later on. But regardless, though, I think that the topic, or to me, the emphasis here in this corporate room is not going to be about health, right? If Arnold's hurt, the season's over anyways. Like it doesn't matter with that schedule. It doesn't matter, right?
You're right. You're right.
It doesn't matter. But his ceiling is just so high, and I cannot believe. I guess I can believe it, but it's kind of crazy how they didn't force out a guy like Dylan Gabriel, but he kind of beat out a guy like Dylan Gabriel in year two, and he's obviously making a bunch of
Allegedly,
money.
allegedly, potentially was going to beat
Listen,
out Dylan Gabriel.
from what I've heard, I think even Venables talking a year ago, right during media days and all that stuff, it sounded like Gabriel only had one more year left with Oklahoma. I think that was the quote. And yeah, Jackson Arnold, he's still a pretty good athlete too. I listen, I'm with you on the bowl game. I'm not with other people. I thought he played well. You mentioned Arizona. That was a really good defense. Um, and I mean he's gonna make young mistakes. He's going to, but he's got talent around him at the skill positions to be a really fun year. And even though you mentioned Levy gone, I like Seth Littrell coming from North Texas. I thought he did good things there. Um, Venables replaced a couple coordinators. You got Zach Alley coming on defense side, which we'll talk to later on in the video. But he's good as well. I listen, I know the schedule's tough. I know the O-line's not great, but the direction of this program is in a good spot. Make no mistake about it.
I like the running back room. I think Gavin Sawchuk is a dang good player. I think he's really good. I mean, 700 yards, 9 touchdowns. If you also watch him too, I mean, he didn't even like imagine what he would have looked like if he had like 200 carries, right? And he was just a redshirt freshman. He's got another year putting on some mass. I think Gavin Sawchuk is going to have a fantastic year. I mean, again, we talk about it every time with running backs. It's really dependent on the offensive line. But Javante Barnes, I think, is okay. Sam Franklin transferring in there from was that UT Martin?
Yep. That's
He had 1,300 yards on 200 touches last year for them with 11 touchdowns. So despite losing Marcus Major and insert name I'm forgetting here.
Tyree Walker.
Thank you.
Both those guys going to the Big Ten, Wisconsin for Walker and Major to Minnesota. Both those guys will be backups, right? They'll be rotational guys for sure. But Sawchuk's an upgrade over those guys. And once they put him in, I mean, 6.2 yards per carry, you saw the explosiveness. You saw how much change was really in that offense, and he kind of ignited a nice little run for Oklahoma.
Javante Barnes is no slouch though either.
Yeah.
So I feel really good about the running back room and the receiver room. I feel really good about this receiver room. I don't know about you. I feel really good about it.
I'm with you here. Here's what I'll say is you've got a couple really, really exciting deep threats, right? I'm looking at a guy like Nick Anderson, right? 700 yards, almost 800 yards a year ago. He's still, I believe, just a true junior, right? Farouk, very talented player as well. Jaden Gibson averaged 27 yards per carry per catch. Brennan Thompson had almost 35. The problem with that though is we talked about the O line, and I hate to keep coming back to it, but the reality is like football is so complimentary, right? If you have a bad O line, you're going to struggle to do things you want to do offensively, and if you cannot protect and you let these guys, these receivers, get down the field and separate and make big time plays and break open the game, that's going to be a real downside, and it's going to be a real limiting factor of this offense. But you mentioned it though, the talent and the experience and the production is in this room for Jackson Arnold to take advantage of. Absolutely.
Now, the health of the wide receiver room is a question mark. Angelo Anthony, Jalil Farouk. I mean, at SEC Media Days, Brett Venables, of course, was addressed it multiple times. He said, and of course, everyone always says this, that like they're progressing well. It's up in the air whether or not they're going to play week 1 against, what do they play? Temple?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to be ready for week 1. I feel better about Jalil Farouk than I do about Angelo Anthony, I believe. Actually, sorry, the opposite about that, because Venables said that Angelo Anthony has had a really good summer. He's still not fully cleared, and we don't play for probably about 6 weeks from now, so we'll get him in a position where he can practice ahead of that first week. But he's been making really good progress. So it sounds like Brent Venables is a little more confident in Angelo Anthony than he is about Jalil Farouk, which is weird because he had he didn't have surgery, but he had a foot injury, but he's been out for like a couple months now. And according to him, that the most recent bone structure analysis was remarkably good, and they've got a really good plan in place that's going to get him to where the week prior to the first game that he hopefully is available. So it's going to kind of be, he just keeps saying the week before these games. So kind of cutting it pretty close there, pal.
Well,
And
and
to me, if they sit out week 1, I think would be it's a nice safety cushion kind of before they get into the absolute nightmare that is their schedule. But yeah, I mean, it is something to think about, the health of the wide receiver and Jackson Arnold's development as a quarterback, having chemistry with some of those really good receivers. Fortunately, though, there are some other good receivers in that room if these guys weren't available for the first couple of weeks. But I do think they're good players, and they make you better if they are available.
just get healthy by week 4, right? With Tennessee. I think Tennessee's secondary, and we'll talk about them later in this episode. they're pretty vulnerable, or at least, a lot of change from an already pretty bad secondary from a year ago, especially beating them over top. But Deion Burks, I mean, he is unbelievable. 5'9", 190. Do not let that size fool you. He is fantastic. He's going to be at the top half, sorry, at the very top of the wide receivers in the SEC. Yeah, holy cow from Purdue. That was a big time get. And I'm sure Jackson Arnold, Seth Luttrell, those guys are going to love him. And he's also he can beat coverage early, right? So if you have a tough offensive line, he's a guy's a quick separator, right? So he can, I guess you can draw up some plays, separate him, isolate him 1-on-1, and he can beat coverage there and kind of somewhat limit, some of the question marks of the offensive line.
So in the tight end room, you're only losing 27 targets, 28
Yeah.
targets in that room, and you're replacing it with guys that had a combined over 60 targets in Jake Roberts and Bauer Sharp coming in over from uh, different schools. I think their tight end room will be fine. I haven't seen these players play a ton. I mean, Jake Roberts has played a lot in his career. Bauer Sharp, this is his first year in Division One football, so we'll see what that looks like there in the tight end room. But other than that, to me, it's a lot of unknown. But a lot of young guys. Well, I guess Cade McIntyre played some. Sorry, he played some last year. But
Yeah.
yeah, the tight end room I think is fine.
Listen, I like I'm sorry, Jake Roberts. He's a guy that was back at North Texas, and he had crossover with the trail there. He was, he was honorable mention All CUSA back there, so which is nice. Obviously, they didn't use their tight ends a ton last year. Right, Austin Stockton was kind of the lead guy coming back to Oklahoma. Didn't quite have the success he wanted to. Regardless, though, Roberts and Sharp, those guys are solid complements. But the focus here on the skill positions, right, that are really going to shine, it's going to be those wide receivers and running backs.
Agreed. And Jackson Arnold. I mean, skill position, but I am excited to see what this offense can do. But I think it's all very dependent on this offensive line. CD, would you
Yeah.
like to break down this offensive line a little bit?
Now I'll do my best. So you're losing what, 4 guys plus Caden Green, right? So there's going to be a lot of snaps gone, right? You've got a lot of
First
transfers
round,
coming in. You've got
first round talent gone. Tyler
yeah,
Guyton.
back-to-back year that you had first round, right? So you got 4 transfers coming in that are probably going to start for you. You've got the Washington kid coming in, Hatchett, who's a nice interior swing guy for you, who is recovering injury, but he's healthy now, which is nice for fall camp. But you're looking at Michael Tarquin. Listen, if you can get closer to the production that he was at Florida, as opposed to what he was at USC, that would be a massive revelation for this offensive line, right? He's probably going to be your left tackle. He's a guy that's got a good amount of experience, but was just much better at Florida than he was at USC. I don't know if that was scheme things or whatnot, but he's back, I guess, in the SEC. Hopefully he can replicate some of that success. Jacob Sexton's a guy that's played a good amount for you. He kind of returns, I guess. So we'll see there. It's a former
Branson
four-star kid as
Hickman
well.
was
Good
very
player.
effective at SMU. Very good player.
Yeah. The staff likes him as well. Um, like I said, at right guard, you're gonna have Nwalu, who's
In
coming over
Nualu.
from North Texas, right? That's a guy obviously Latrell's familiar with, which we always talk about here. Like, if you're following coaches, like expect a good floor and expect some kind of role on your team, whether it's as depth, but or as a starter. And then Spencer Brown, who I never really liked at Michigan State. I don't really want to have to rely on him in the SEC, regardless though he's played a ton of football. So that's good as well. The depth is something of a question mark for sure. But yeah, the reality is you lose what, like 5 guys, 6 guys. So it's going to be tough to replace. But, it is what it is. It's kind of what you have to do with in the SEC. You just gotta figure it out because you cannot waste a year of Jackson Darnold. I'm sorry, wow. Just like Jackson Darnold. That's crazy. Jackson Arnold uh in this offense. That'd be a shame.
It would be. Let's move on over then to the defensive line. Unless you had any more thoughts on this offensive group, which I think could be pretty good. Um, got a new DC over there, Zach Alley. Awesome. Who cares? Brent Venables is the defensive line. So I'm not really concerned about who they hire in that spot. The defensive line, though, I see some interesting names. I see a lot of experience, is what I see. A ton of experience. That is the headliner of this defensive line going into 2024 in the SEC, which I think is important because you go into the SEC with, I mean, not just going in the SEC, but like having this schedule and not having a defensive line that has a lot of snaps the way that these players do on this defensive line, you are asking for some serious trouble.
Yeah.
You are, which is good news for Oklahoma and their fans.
I'm with you. Ethan Downs is a real good player. You're hoping you get a little bit more production from him, but I do think in general he's going to benefit from other players around him also getting better. You're bringing back, like you said, a lot of experience there. Armis and Thomas and Trace Ford. You're hoping those guys are stepping up as well. Caden Woolard, you're coming over from Miami High. He's a guy that just loves getting to the quarterback. I think he fits super well in this defense. Venables and Alley are going to absolutely love him. And they went out and got him. That was a big recruiting win, a big
Yeah, I
transfer
mean
portal win.
that's something that they struggled with last year was getting the quarterback down. I think they were 91st in the country in sacks per game. So adding Alec Caden Woolard to that edge group, as long as he can maintain that productivity in the SEC, which is a big ask, you know, um, I think he's got a chance to really inject some life into that defensive line, that edge group specifically.
Yeah, and real quick, that group. I mean, everyone's kind of waiting on that 5-star, Adebore, Ade Adebawore. I'm sorry, 5-star kid. And he was he just pops right when you watch him play. He had some limited snaps a year ago. I still might think he's a year away, but that's why you went out and got a guy like Woolard, and you have Ethan Downs returning, so you're not relying too much on a pretty raw kid who gave you 180 snaps last year. But if you can keep him under 300 this year and just really limited role, I think that would be a sign of other players stepping up and playing pretty well, but also, not forcing a kid into something maybe before he's too early or too soon, whatever. Maybe interior defensive line, though, TCU's Dominic Williams. That was a big time get. I
Oh
thought
yeah.
he flashed really, really well when he puts it together. He's going to pair with Dejon Terry. Those are two big time bodies in the middle of your defense. Obviously, the 5-star David Stone. We've talked about him. We really, really love him and his potential. And potentially, if he needs to give you some stuff this year, anything you get from him, though, is gravy. But regardless, holy cow. And that's kind of what Venables, that's what he promised to do. And Lincoln Riley struggled with it. Obviously, you had the wide receivers, you had the quarterbacks. Offense, right, was obviously really good for a while, not going back even Bob Stoops, but defensively, Brent Venables, that's what you expected him to bring in. You really expected him to have a consistent, very, very talented, deep defense, and he's done that. I think in year 3 here, I pretty much I like this team. I like this defense.
The linebacking core. You bring back Danny Stutzman. I mean, come on. What a humongous return. And we haven't gotten to the secondary yet. We will. There's other guys that could have gone to the NFL, but Danny Stutzman and Brent Venables mentioned this at SEC Media Days, like how, like what it means to that defense, right? And like kind of what goes in that decision because he could have gone to the NFL. Absolutely. But Danny Stutzman being there with the experience that he has, the production that he has, and the leadership that he's going to provide to this defense heading into the SEC, that is going to be invaluable. I think Danny Stutzman is invaluable. He was a fantastic. I don't know if he's the best player on this defense because I'm looking at another guy that, I maybe think is better. But I think Danny Stutzman is the most valuable player in this defense.
Yeah, I mean, he is leader, heart and soul. He's a game changer, playmaker, everything you want in your middle linebacker. He is. And around him, you got a guy like Kip Lewis, who sounds like he's going to be the will there. It's a talented kid they brought in a couple cycles ago. I think they like his development so far. I'm sorry, Kendall Dolby is going to play that cheetah position that they have, kind of that nickel, whatever. He's a solid player for you. Desan McCullough, he's been there for a while now. He's going to play also in that cheetah, maybe will position. There is talent around Stutzman, and he brings the experience, right? He brings the leadership, and then you have athletes, and you have athletes around him go around and make some plays. That is pretty darn good for Venables and Zach Alley.
Yeah, I think that's such a great combination. When you have a guy that plays Mike, that is where he needs to be and makes tackles and can put everyone in the right spots. If you surround a guy like that with that kind of experience and, ball knowledge, if you surround athletes, like he's going to put his athletes and Coach Venables' athletes in the right spots in order to make plays.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it a ton, but you got the mics in your helmets, right? One player on defense, one player
Oh,
on
yeah.
offense. You better believe Danny Stutzman's going to be that guy wearing it. And that, yes, you like it for maybe a younger and experienced guy because you can have that constant communication with your coaches, but also like the you can have the other way, right? Where you have, I mean, you can't talk back to him obviously, but it just it just goes that much quicker, right? You see that game that much quicker. You can see checks, make checks. You can have that constant communication, even more so on the sideline too. I think it benefits the defense, like Oklahoma, who's yes, they got a new defense coordinator. You mentioned Brent Venables is going to have a big time hand in it. They're going to get back to blitzing, I think, and some of those best teams, the best defenses he had at Clemson, they just blitzed the crap out of you. It was 60 minutes of just trying to fight off crazy blitzes and your quarterback running for their life, and you got these freak athletes. They finally have the athletes to do it, right? And yeah, holy cow, it should be fun. Very fun defense to watch.
Let's move over to the secondary. Uh, Billy Bowman coming back. Are we kidding? I mean, how big was that? I mean,
Yeah,
right along there with Danny Stutzman. I mean, just getting those two guys back with their experience production is just so valuable. And then you look at a guy like Woody Washington, 851 snaps last year. That's a guy that is physical in the run game as a corner. He gets after it, dude. Big fan of
I
Woody
love.
Washington. I think
Yep.
he's a special kind of player. I don't know if he's getting NFL looks, but in me, I like physical corners that get involved in the run game. That to me describes Woody Washington. Over at the other spot, Gentry Williams. I think it's gonna be him. Yeah, I mean he played 370 snaps last year. I don't think he was terrible, right? I
And you
think this.
you're
Oh,
bringing a guy with the experience of Des Malone too to fight for that spot. That's not
from
bad at
San
all coming over
Diego's.
from San Diego State. Yep.
Yep. I think the secondary. Oh, and then Peyton Bowen. By the way, we didn't even. I mean the youngster. I mean I think I think the secondary is pretty talented. I think it's pretty talented.
Yeah, Robert Spears Jennings comes back. Reggie Powers is a young kid, true freshman that they like there as well. It is exactly how you would have expected Brent Venables' team to look in year three. This defense, they've got playmakers, they've got athletes, they've got experience. It's yes, their O line is questionable and their schedule is brutal, which we'll get into in a little bit here shortly. But there is a lot to like about this team, talent wise, experience, schematically, the way that they fit along next to each other. We mentioned how complimentary that linebacker room is, even that defensive line. I mean, it is well done. Well done, Venables, who kind of got off to, I guess, a shaky start, but he's no surprise, no questions on how they're gonna be in the future of the SEC.
Now let's head over to their schedule. It's brutal, man. I mean, they got the short end of the butt stick when it comes to the schedule that they got dealt. Here's their schedule. They play Temple at home. Okay. Houston at home. Tulane at home. All right. Awesome. Great stuff. Um, in between Houston, or sorry, no, and then they get Tennessee at home after Tulane. Then they go to Auburn, which it's not always easy going to Auburn. Then you get Texas at the Cotton Bowl after a bye. Then you go play South Carolina at home. Then you play Ole Miss on the road. Then you play Maine at home. And then you play Missouri on the road. Then you have a bye. And then you play Alabama at home. And then you play LSU on the road. Brutal, brutal, brutal. I mean, LSU, Missouri, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, Auburn on the road, Tennessee. I mean, the worst team that they drew really was South Carolina. And guess what? South Carolina has a sneaky team this year that,
Yeah.
in my opinion, matches up pretty well against Ole Miss or against Oklahoma because they have a solid defensive line. Scary, scary, scary schedule, which is why their win total is only at 7.5. Because I mean, I look up and down this roster and I'm like, wow, this is a good football team, man. Like this is a good football team. People are counting them out, I feel like. But goodness gracious, they did not get any favors with their schedule at all. You're out of conference. I would assume that they go 4-0. Okay. But then in the SEC, it's can they go 4-4 in their SEC games? Playing again, like I said, LSU, Alabama, Missouri, Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma, or Tennessee, Auburn, and South Carolina. So if you win Auburn and South Carolina, you still have to find two more wins in those other schools. And I think they'll beat LSU. But you have to go to Death Valley. That's the thing. You have to go to Auburn. You have to go to Death Valley. Like some of your most winnable games, I think, in the SEC. You're going on the road, man. South Carolina at home, I feel pretty good about that though for them. But man, this is a tough, tough schedule.
Yeah, they did not.
And
Oh, yeah.
I want to take the over really bad. I can't do it though. I'm gonna go the under, and I think I'm gonna regret that because I have a feeling this is a team that could win 9-10 games. Really could. My questions on the offensive line are a big deal, and then uh, and then the schedule, right, is really what it comes down to.
If you told me right now, Arnold stays healthy, the O line is middle of the pack in the SEC, I would feel really good about the over. But I don't know how. I don't think either of those are a sure thing. Even you're out of conference, right? Temple's not very good, right? But Houston's a well-coached team. Right? They got a new coaching staff in there, even though they're not
They
super talented, but
stink. They
they do stink,
stink.
right? But
It's not even the hardest
the
out of
well-coached.
conference game you have.
No, Tulane also has new coaching staff, but John Summerall, is going to have those guys
They actually
humming.
have talent though on Tulane. They actually do.
Yeah, and they got guys from last year that were drafted and playing the SEC this year. But then, yeah, Tennessee. Listen, this team is talented enough to go, like you said, 8, 9, 10 wins. It's going to be tough, though. I mean, I hate to take the under. I really do. And I think, like you said, this could come back to bite us, but I'm
I
going to
think
go
it
under
is.
too. 7 and
I really
5
think it is.
seems like a good year in year one in the SEC here, but I mean, you're going 4-0, Auburn, even on the road. That place is going to be buzzing, buzzing. And by the way, that's Auburn who hasn't had to go on the road all year. That's still they've opened with 5 straight home games. So they're not gonna be too jet lagged there. I don't know, man. It's a shame that Oklahoma gets this schedule in year one, but
If this
it's gonna
offensive
be a
line
fun.
though, if this offensive line is good, and I mean like top half, I think people are going to be talking about them as a playoff team in November.
And their November is it's it's pretty tough, right? Missouri,
Pretty
Bama,
tough.
LSU.
Missouri, Bama, LSU is brutal, and two of those games are on the road.
Yeah.
Alabama, who's your toughest team, you get at home. I mean, yeah, you could go 0-3 in those games for sure. Yeah, this is tough, man. I gotta, yeah, I gotta go with the under, which hurts me to say because I think this is actually a really good football team. Which I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see. They're recruiting at a high level. Brent Venables, I think, has this thing headed in the right direction. So Oklahoma fans, do not worry. Do not worry.